Good morning, my name's Amanda Barnes and I head up the Jordan's Anti-Money Laundering ID and Fraud Services. Firstly, I wish to apologise to you all that this morning we had some problems with Skype, something we couldn't overcome, so that we're pre-recording what we would have done, and we will send this out to you all individually to those that have registered. So today we're going to be talking about the AML insights for the property market. And as I said before, my name is Amanda Barnes and I head up the ID and Fraud Services. I've worked within the financial data industry for the last 15 years, and I'm also part of a design team here at Jordan's who created the AML e-verification platform for originally the professional sector. I train clients across the UK from legal and accountancy sectors, and I head up the AML and compliance team in Bristol. And I currently work with some of the UK's top UK house builders with reference to AML procedures. And I'd also like to introduce you to Helen.
Good morning, everybody. So my name's Helen Baz-Gallop. I'm a senior assistant here at Jordan's. I work in Jordan's within the ID and Fraud department. I have done for the last 5 years, and I've worked exclusively within the IT and data industry for the past 6. Within Jordan's ID and Fraud department, I'm responsible for the account management and the customer services. And I do deal with the ongoing client training and inquiries, and specifically relating to this webinar video, I do assist property developers in complying with AML legislation as well. So this is the agenda for this presentation today. So we're going to start off with, firstly, who are Jordan's as a company, and how do they relate to Vistra. We're then going to move on to anti-money laundering within the property market, and how the fourth money laundering directive has had an effect on this. We are then going to look at where the responsibility for actually carrying out those AML checks lies within the property sector, and how this relates to the outsourcing of AML to third parties. And we're going to finish up with looking at soft footprints and what their effect on this industry and this service are. So firstly, who are Jordan's and Vistra? So Jordan's is now actually part of Vistra. We have been since 2016. Vistra is one of the world's leading corporate services providers, and they employ over 4,000 professionals in 80 cities across 46 jurisdictions. As you can appreciate through those large numbers there for employees and locations, this provides us with a unique position to actually give our clients everything they need under one roof. This will be from services such as business information, AML and compliance, UK and international incorporations and company secretarial support, through to our wider corporate governance, director, accounting, tax and legal services. Again, if you have any questions about any of our other services, please do use the email address amlquery@jordans.co.uk. I'm going to pass over to Amanda now, and she's going to go over anti-money laundering and the property market and the fourth money laundering directive.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I thought we'd just briefly discuss about the fourth money laundering directive, which I'm sure that everybody's aware that came into place on the 26th of June 2017, and that fourth money laundering regulation, if you like, pulled in the estate agents, home builders, the property market as such, and there's much speculation on about how much AML checks we have to do on our clients and in what ways we have to do them because of the fourth money laundering directive. But we know now and going forward that compliance in the property sector will grow. People will look for more stringent policies to be put into place, and that will be looked at and regulated. But it's easy to see why. None of us here are naive to the fact that one of the ways to launder proceeds of crime into this country or any country is through the purchasing of a property. It's a lucrative way to clean money. So it's important that all professionals, that we're all aware of the money laundering regulations. And it's also important that our staff, all our staff, are trained to identify and report suspicious activity going forward, that they fully understand what AML is for and why it is so important in the property market. The fourth money laundering directive, just to pull off some parts of it, if you wish, are that we are responsible for confirming a client's identity before entering into a business relationship with them. So if Amanda Barnes is purchasing the property today, it's important that is that Amanda Barnes, is that her correct date of birth, is where she says she is residing at the moment, is that actually where she is? And we need to put in checks and controls to prevent money laundering on a company-wide scale. And this all comes down to staff training and showing people the importance of AML checks and knowing who their clients are. And it's important that we appoint a nominated officer, that a money laundering officer fully understands what their responsibilities are. And the retention of client records, in keeping with the GDPR 2018 regulations. We will talk about GDPR in a completely another presentation, but it is important to know that anti-money laundering procedures and GDPR regulations do have overlaps. So I'm going to hand you over now to talk about who in the property sector is best placed to carry out an AML check. So Helen's just going to talk to you first of all about that.
So there are options. There are several options for where the actual sort of responsibility for carrying out these checks lays. So firstly, we're going to look at the reservation slash sales team, who are the first point of contact. We're then going to look at an in-house team and what are the sort of benefits to that team doing it. And we're also going to look into third-party solicitors as well, and the actual legality behind whether we can use a third party. So firstly, the reservation point of sale team. So there are some potential issues that can occur with using the reservation and point of sales team. So firstly, this can hold up the sales process for the client. This is primarily because that client is actually sat in front of the salesperson. And if that salesperson, as the next point states, what happens if they get an alert for that client? Now, because that client is sat in front of that salesperson, is that salesperson more likely to tip off that client that they have received an alert result for whatever reason that may be? There's also we need to look at the point of, because that client is sat in front of the salesperson whilst they are entering their data, is there an increased likelihood of that salesperson having some data input error of that person's personal information? We all know what that's like when someone's sat in front of you watching every move you are making. We all feel those time pressures, and we've all noticed that we can make mistakes because we feel pressured to get it done quickly because someone's watching us. But the main thing that we need to keep in mind with this situation is that the reservation should always be professional and easy for the purchaser. So moving on to the next option, should an in-house team carry out these AML checks? So there are a couple of advantages to this solution. So the first thing is that it's one team. One team is fully trained to understand the AML and compliance procedures. That client information is passed from the sales team person through to the central team, who then input and compile the data results. And it also means that should that client be an alert through false information. Now, what we mean when we say false information is their document might come back as being falsified. They might come back as not being registered as living at their address, or John Smith might have been matched on an international PEPs and sanctions list. But what it means is that that team can carry out the correct procedures for the reporting, because they don't have that time pressure of the client actually being sat there in front of them, watching everything they do and waiting for an answer. And the final point is that that data can be captured and stored compliantly in one location without having to be passed from pillar to post in several different locations. I'm going to pass over to Amanda. She's going to go over the final point, which is the third-party solicitors and the legality behind them carrying out these checks for us.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. And just to recap on the importance of what Helen has actually said, there is no right or no wrong way of who in a point of reservation should carry out that check. These are the two ways that most providers, or the two only ways to do it, either at point of sale or an in-house team take the check. It's really important what Helen brought up with the salesperson, where we look at and said tipping off. So that brings to the point that if you are going to have an AML procedure, checking procedure in place at point of reservation, the sales team are trained differently. They understand the importance of not tipping off. So if I was to say to a salesperson today, there is a danger that you may tip somebody off, tip them off about what? So we train a salesperson face to face at point of reservation. We will look at training them differently across the whole spectrum. Very, very different from an in-house team, that unless they actually ring up the client or email that client, then they're not going to be actually tipping somebody off. So it's quite important to remember, no right or wrong way, different ways of training, different ways of addressing a situation. Okay, on to, as Helen said, in-house team carrying out, third-party solicitor carrying out an AML check on behalf of their client. This has got quite interesting, has been brought up quite a few times. In other words, we're a property developer. Amanda comes today to reserve a property, and we're going to use a third-party solicitor to carry out the AML check for us. In other words, we are not responsible ourselves for carrying out that check. We're not going to put in the details of Amanda Barnes. We're not going to check her driving license ourselves. Now, it's important to remember here that there are 2 points which make this not a good route to take. And the reason being is there are 2 things: a contract between a data provider and a client, I'll go through that, and a soft footprint, which I'll ask Helen to address. The data industry has 2 types of contract, primarily 2. One is a direct agreement between the data provider and the person, business that they are providing their service to. And then there is also a reseller contract where the data provider will supply different sets of data to a third party, who will then add different parts of data to that to make it a product. They will rebrand it as their own, in their own name, and they will resell it on. It's a reseller contract. But for all data providers in this situation of AML services, it is a contract between the data provider and, i.e., the solicitor or the house builder. And it's important to remember that in the terms and conditions that you will typically see between data providers, it will say, and you'll see at the bottom part of this screen, it will say this subscription is for the use of, name a company, and all subsidiaries of. You may not resell, redistribute, or make available the services to any third party outside of and such subsidiaries. In other words, this is for the sole use of the person that this agreement is with. So if you've got a house builder who then goes to a third-party solicitor and asks them to do a check on them, that solicitor carries it out on behalf of a third party. That is breaking the terms and conditions that are here. And these are standard across the data industry. Okay. Also, I'd like to ask Helen about the ICO.
Yes. So the ICO, which stands for the Information Commissioner's Office, this is actually a requirement that anybody that accesses or processes a person's personal information, whether that be storing it, processing it for anti-money laundering, they have to be registered with the ICO. Now, one of the problems with outsourcing this to a third party is that depending on what that third party does as its main source of business, can you actually be sure that they are registered with the Information Commissioner's Office? Because as we've just stated, that is something that is required by law for anybody that is dealing with personal information and storing that information in any way, shape or form. Moving on from that, which also ties in with the third party aspect of this presentation, is the soft footprint. So what is a soft footprint, and why should it actually concern us? Well, a soft footprint is essentially, it's a transparent record for the actual individual of who has been viewing and utilising their data, their credit file. Now, this record is left under the name of the entity that processes it. So obviously that links back to the third party data. Now, obviously, John Smith has come to the property developer to reserve or buy that plot or that house. The relationship is between John Smith and that property developer. Now, if that property developer then sends John Smith's data to a third party, the soft footprint will be left against with a record of the entity that John Smith has no relationship with. He has no business relationship with this entity that has processed his data. That leads into its own set of complications. Now, there is something to be aware of as well within the soft footprint area. There is also something known as a hard footprint within this sort of industry, this area of the industry. Now, a hard footprint differs from a soft footprint. Now, a soft footprint, as we've said, is used to indicate of any warnings about a person. It confirms if their details are correct, and it's a transparent record on that individual's credit file, but it has no effect on that person's creditworthiness. Now, a hard footprint is different because it remains on the file for 12 months. It is visible to other lenders, and it's used when you're looking to borrow money, and a rejection against a hard footprint will affect somebody's creditworthiness. So those are the key differences between the two. I'm going to pass over to Amanda for her to sort of wrap that up very nicely with this next diagram.
Yeah, and I just to go back on what Helen said there, because that's very well put. A lot of people don't understand the difference between a soft footprint and a hard footprint, especially with data protection. GDPR is more important that we, when we're outsourcing to look at any e-verification, anti-money laundering process, that if we should use a third party, that your terms and conditions between yourself and, let's say, the person purchasing the property, your terms and conditions rightfully reflect the relationship that you have with a third party. And it should also read that you may use a data source to further clarify the identification of the person that you are reserving the property for, and that this is a soft footprint, and this will not affect your client's credit score. And this needs to be in your terms and conditions as well. And if you've got any further questions about this, you can directly speak to Helen and I, and we can also show you the correct wording that should actually be in there. What I'd just like to say is, as Helen has said before, as we're just trying to say thank you as quickly as we can, the contractual issues, just to go back through that. Property developer, John comes along, point of reservation, puts a deposit down, immediately has a relationship with the property developer. Property developer needs to do his anti-money laundering compliance checks, comes direct to an AML service provider. They supply the information, goes back to property developer, and the information is correctly stored on the property developer's systems. And so that is viewed also for 5 years. As Helen's rightfully said, you go off piste, we go to a third party solicitor, soft footprint, massive issue. But also you're breaking the contractual agreement between a data provider and a third party as well. So you can see the areas of difficulty that you're going to go into. I think we did have some questions, Helen, didn't
Did
we?
we?
Yeah, we did. Because obviously we did have a couple of questions come through beforehand that we were asked to address.
Yeah.
So we're going to do those anyway. So I'm sorry we couldn't do it in a live webinar, but we will take these questions and answer them. So do you want to do the first one, Helen?
Yep. So the first question that we've had is with regards to overseas clients, and whether the anti-money laundering for a client based abroad actually differs from the anti-money laundering procedures for a client based within the UK. So I'm going to pass over to Amanda for her to answer that.
So in a way, the answer is no, it is no different. You need to get the same information. Where it actually differs is how much harder it is to get the information on, let's say, Amanda Barnes, who lives in France instead of living in the United Kingdom. It's easy to check her address. Yes, there are systems where you can put in and look to find Amanda's address in France, but I assure you how data is filed and sourced on address information in countries such as France, Hong Kong, is very, very different to how we store address information on us here in the UK. So what the first part of the compliance is, we still check that that international passport is in date, that the number is correct. We also check that that client is a politically exposed person, or if there are any sanctions or enforcements on that individual. Thirdly, proof of address. I mean, we're looking really to see that that should be clarified by a solicitor, a legal source in the country of origin where that client actually resides. I mean, should it be a company, then we would look to gain an international company report to look at the business entity and do further research, should it be necessary, into source of funds, beneficial owners. And obviously these are services, if you like, that all come under the AML banner for Jordans. There was another one, Helen, was there?
Yep, so there was a second question which was with regards to gifted deposits. So we've had somebody question when the person coming in to buy the property has been gifted that money by another party. Again, how does the money laundering for that situation differ from the everyday situations?
Okay, well, simply put, it's very easy to just look at the person you're doing an AML check on, and 9 times out of 10 that is absolutely fine. But that's a brilliant question, really, because most people won't realise that if Amanda is gifted money from her parents or and another, then it is the responsibility of, in this question we're talking now, the house builder to carry out an AML check on Amanda's parents. So you would have to do the check on both her father or her mother. That becomes interesting because Helen and both of us have seen where this has been the case, and actually when the AML check is actually carried out, that no, the person who's reserving the property is not an alert on an anti-money laundering check, absolutely not. But voila, the person who has gifted those funds, Helen, haven't they? They gifted the funds, actually are. And we've seen a couple that are staggeringly interesting. So that is a very valid question, and not to be overlooked. So if someone's gifted funds, then you must carry out AML checks also on the person that's gifted those deposits. What we'd just like to say to you is, again, we do apologise we couldn't do this live, but we'd like to say thank you to everybody who attended, and to also let you know that what we plan to do going forward is to do more AML webinars such as this on different subjects. So what I would also ask you, that if there is any subject on anti-money laundering that you feel you would like to know more about, if you would like us to present on, then please let Helen or I know, and we will look at doing a webinar such as this to cover those questions. So thank you very much. Wish you all a good day.
Thank you very much for attending, everybody.